Crystal, can you
Yeah.
mute yourself? I don't want to mute you because I'm always afraid if I do it, you can't figure out how to come off of mute. Thank you.
Staff Member Davis.
Yes.
We are just waiting for a few more members. Lorinda's not on the call yet, so.
Yeah. Rachel, do you want me to?
Oh, here she is.
Oh, there she is.
All right. So let's make sure. 1, 2. Okay. I believe all of the members are present. Committee Member Anderson, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. And do you have the agenda that I sent you?
I'm pulling it up as we speak.
Okay.
All right, so good morning, everybody. This is Committee Member Anderson of the Public Health and Pharmacy Formulary Advisory Committee, and I now call this meeting to order. Today is August 16th, 2023, and it is 9:03 a.m. Public Health and Pharmacy Formulary Advisory Committee meetings are conducted in accordance with the Oregon Public Meetings Law. Under the Public Meetings Law, governing body meetings are open to the public except as otherwise provided by law. The presiding officer has the authority to keep order and to impose any reasonable restrictions necessary for the efficient and orderly conduct of a meeting. Governing bodies are authorized by ORS 192.660 to meet in closed or executive session, unquote, in certain limited situations. All official actions by the committee must be taken by public vote, and the vote of each member must be recorded. We will now take roll call for the record. When I call your name, please verbally acknowledge here. Committee Member Andrew Gibler.
Here.
Committee Member Catherine Hammond.
Here.
Committee Member Mark Myers.
Here.
Staff Member Jennifer Davis.
Here.
Staff Member Brianna Efremoff.
Here.
Staff Member Rachel Melvin.
Here.
Staff Member Joseph Schnabel.
Here.
And it looks like committee members Sean Jones, Alicia Lee, and Saren Wickenhagen are excused. All right, so let's review some housekeeping items and meeting etiquette. Committee members and staff will silence all devices. Identify yourself as committee member or staff member, last name each time you speak. Please speak clearly and one at a time as it is critical for the public record. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and retained for public record keeping purposes. Public comment, if applicable, occurs towards the end of the meeting, and the committee will not deliberate any issues or requests during public comment, such as formal requests or currently proposed protocols. We will now approve the meeting agenda. Could I please have a volunteer for a committee member who will second all motions for the remainder of the meeting?
As committee member Gibbler, I can do that.
Great, thank you. And so for the record, committee member Gibbler has volunteered to second all motions for the meeting. All right, so I, committee member Anderson, move to approve the agenda.
Committee member Gibbler, second.
Okay, committee member Hammond.
Yes, sorry.
All right, and committee member Myers.
Aye.
Great. All right, we will now approve the 2/15 meeting minutes, which were from February 15th. So I, committee member Anderson, move to approve the February 15th, 2023 meeting minutes.
This is committee member Gibbler, I second.
Okay, committee member Hammond.
Yes, I approve as well.
All right, and committee member Myers.
Aye.
All right, and we're going to move on to the meeting minutes from May 15th, 2023. So I, committee member Anderson, move to approve the 5/17/2023 meeting minutes.
This is committee member Gibbler, I second.
All right, committee member Hammond.
This is committee member Hammond. I third.
All right, and committee member Myers.
Aye.
Great. All of those have been passed. We will now discuss proposed future Public Health Pharmacy Formulary Advisory Committee meetings. Board staff have suggested the following dates for future 2024 meetings. They include 2/21/24, 5/15/2024, 8/21/2024, and 11/20/2024. Are there any conflicts that others on the committee can think of or might have immediately? I know this next year.
Can you repeat the summer and fall dates again?
Sure, the dates include February 21st of next year, May 15th of next year, 8/21, so that would be August 21 of 2024, and November 20th of 2024.
November 20th? Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I have no conflicts that I could foresee.
If you all know your schedule that far ahead in advance, I'm impressed.
I know exactly. Yeah, I don't know my schedule that far in advance. So I can work around these probably.
Yeah, the important times are no spring break and right after the kids get out of school. Early summer is usually hard for us because we like to get away, but none of those dates conflict with that.
Yeah, not that I can see either. I agree. All right. Any other thoughts or discussion on the dates being proposed? All right, if no more discussion, then I, Committee Member Anderson, move to approve these dates for the 2024 Public Health Pharmacy Formulary Advisory Committee meeting dates as proposed.
This is Committee Member Gibler, and I second.
Great. Committee Member Hammond
Yes, I agree.
and Committee Member Myers.
Aye.
All right. We will now hear from Staff Member Schnabel regarding current reappointment updates.
Hello. There really is no news. I think we heard that Committee Member Sean Jones has agreed to continue on in perpetuity, although we are still looking for a physician member to replace him. And then there are some committee expirations that are eligible for reappointment in April. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will now receive a rules update from Staff Member Davis.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen to see how this goes. Hold on just a second. Okay, you should be seeing a rulemaking notice filing. Is that correct?
Yes, we can
Okay.
see it.
Yes.
So at the board meeting that just happened last week, the board adopted the rules that I'm showing here on the screen. What this does is it moves the rules that are currently in Division 20 for this committee and all the processes for this committee into a new division for pharmacists. So the board has rewritten the entire pharmacist division of rules, along with all the technician rules and all the intern rules. So there's a very big lift happening right now. The board has adopted them at this past meeting, most of them. There were some that were pulled out, but most of the rules in this package were adopted by the board and will become effective on March 1st, 2024. So what I have here on the screen is just one of the rules. I think there's 3 rules around the formulary or protocol compendium. So it's 330, 335, 340, sorry, and 345. Those are the 4 rules that relate to this committee. And most of it is a movement of language from one place to another. There were some changes that were made just as an overall thought process, looking at kind of how this committee's role has fleshed out and the different things. So there were some changes that have occurred within the rules. I'm not going to go line by line, but I do encourage you to look at the board adoption notices, which will be going out later this week because it has the full permanent adopted language that will become effective on March 1st, 2024. There were no new protocols or anything like that adopted at this meeting. This is just adopting like the same protocols and formulary items that we had in place previously. Any questions on that? I can't see hands, so.
This is Committee Member Anderson. So you're saying that they just moved the same exact language over from one area to a different with different numbers. Is that correct?
In most cases, there were some language changes. Some of it was like grammatical fixes, and then some of it would be what you would call substantive in the 330 rule and the 335 rule.
Any way you could point out what those substantive changes were?
Maybe. Give me just
not a lot of time.
Yeah, give me just
Sorry.
a second. I have like the rule summary, and I think that's probably the best for me just to read. So in 330, the new rule relocates and revises portions of the existing rule from 855-020-0105 and 020-0110 to this rule. Pharmacist prescribing practices for the formulary protocol compendia. Revisions include how to propose additions to the compendia. I think that's in paren 2. Ensure proper training, collecting patient information, assessing, creating individualized care plans, implementing therapy, monitoring and modifying plans, notifying other healthcare providers, and using electronic communication for consultations and then also has rules about retention of records. For the most part, it's the same. The major, I think, kind of switch is in paren 5. It uses the whole collect, assess, the JC, I can't think, JCPP process. Is that, am I thinking of the right initials? Collect, assess, create, implement, modify, rather than having the old language kind of read like the pharmacist were to create their own protocols and follow them. And so that was removed. So it's much more clear that they are to follow the protocols that this committee adopts or approves and then the board adopts. In the next rule, 335, again, it relocates and revises the existing rule from 855-020-0120, and it removes the prohibition on prescribing to persons other than yourself. So, for example, a spouse or a child. In 340, it's almost identical language. I think we did a little bit of grammatical fix in the lead-in, and same thing on 345, grammatical fix on the lead-in. Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
And like I said, you'll be noticed all of this later this week with the finalized documents. So, okay. Oops, you're seeing my screen. Sorry. Okay, next I'm going to show you another presentation. I'm going to see how I do with showing PowerPoint today. Guess we did this earlier and I had problems. Let's see here. Oh, you're seeing my slideshow? That's not what we want you to do. That's really awful. All right, hold on. Let me change the way I'm sharing my screen. This whole learning how to share, but not sharing it as a PDF. It's interesting. Oh, I know what I have to do. Hold on just a second. I have dual monitors going, and that's what it was causing problem. Right, and let me share my screen. Hopefully this will do the right thing. Right. Staff member Melvin, are you seeing the full slide?
Yes, you look good to go.
All right. So we've kind of gone over this before, I think in different orientations and things like that, but just kind of as a reminder, how a law or policy directive becomes a rule and how that kind of interplays here with this committee. So if we have a new law or directive, or we get a protocol submission, an idea from a pharmacist, that's an initiating event. And then staff members do research, may bring an idea to this work group to say, hey, do you want to have this further worked up? Is this something that you're in agreement on? And then we bring in the subject matter experts who really do the bulk of the work. And we have many of them on the phone today to talk about the protocols that are being presented. Well, then we will draft the proposed protocols. The SMEs draft the protocols. And then board staff actually draft proposed rules. So when the committee adopts or motions to say, hey, board, we'd like you to look at this protocol, I also draft a rule, because what the board does is they send the rule to rulemaking, which includes a reference to the protocol, and the protocol is also posted with the rulemaking, so the public can comment, and then it either gets adopted as a adopted by the board, or it may get sent back to the committee for more work And so things kind of go round and round in steps 3, 4, and 5 until the board finally adopts the rule, which they're adopting the protocol by adopting the rule. So right now, and this is the way it shows in Division 20, because these are the rules through next March, a pharmacist may prescribe via statewide drug therapy management protocol according to the rules outlined in this division, a drug and device listed in the following compendium, and it stops with paren G. So we have preventative care and paren G, which is the contraception, which was our newest protocol. What would happen should the committee move forward any of the protocols today? This is essentially the language that I would present to the board. So you would have a paren H for immunizations, and then each protocol under immunizations would have its own rule. And it would each protocol would be adopted by reference. So it would have a version and a number, and we'd be very clear to the licensees as to which protocol version is the currently approved one and that they should be using. And of course, those protocols will be posted on our website. Those of you who are familiar, currently pharmacists provide all of these immunizations, but it's through a protocol written by the Oregon Health Authority. There's a multitude of reasons that I won't go into specifics, but it's best if we move these protocols under the purview of the board and that the board is making the decisions as to the protocol and utilizing this committee for the content of each protocol. It also gives us a way to manage updates and being sure that the board is aware of any changes or updates that are made to the protocol. So this is kind of just the structure so you could see what it might look like in rule. And then I already talked about this, but we just adopted a new place that these will go in the rules. So then I mocked up for you what it would look like. So the board just adopted what's on this slide through paren G with the current protocols. And then we would bring a temporary rule, I think is what we'll have to do to be effective March 1st if these protocols are adopted prior to then by the board, that would look just like this. So very similar in the way it would look. What I wanted to kind of show you today is the timeline and the process, and this is also good for the public because we have started to get some questions about this. So what would potentially happen today if you were to motion to send the protocols to the board for review? Or you may send some of them and not all of them. You may not send any of them, and we may come back and do more meeting in November. I can't predict the future of today, but if you were to send it today, then in the October board meeting, potentially, the board would review the protocols and the draft rule that I've written. I've showed you what it would look like. And then the board would send the protocols within Division 20 for adoption to the rulemaking hearing, because Division 20 is where the rules sit now, and they are effective through 2/28/2024, or 2/29. I can't remember if it's a leap year, last day of February. And then there would be a rulemaking hearing, which is already scheduled for 11/21/23. And then the board could consider to adopt the amendments to Division 20 at the December 2023 meeting. At the December 2023 meeting, I most likely would also bring the board a draft of the Division 115 modifications that would be needed to coincide. Potentially, if the board, if the SMEs and this committee feel like an effective date for adoption of Division 20 or these new protocols is 1/1, that's what I put in there under January. In February, the board could adopt a temporary rule that would amend the Division 115 and add the immunization protocols to it. They would make the effective date of that temporary rule to be March 1st, 2024. So it would align with all the other Division 115. And then in April, the board would send the Division 115 protocols for adoption to rulemaking hearing, because we've adopted a temporary rule. It's only good for 180 days. Then we would motion to send it to permanent rulemaking. The rulemaking hearing, I don't have a date yet for the 2024, or I might, and I just didn't go find it. And then in June, potentially the board would adopt a permanent rule. So everything we do right now, as a board, it almost takes like 4 steps to do anything, because you have to do it in what the current rules are if it's going to be effective before 3/1/2024. And then you also have to make the same changes in what's going to happen with the rules that are effective on 3/1/2024. So it's a bit of a lengthy process. And so this is what it would look like if everything went through today and you wanted a 1/1 effective date. And that's open for discussion. Ongoing, so after this initial round of getting all these protocols moved over under the Board of Pharmacy, ongoing what it would look like, and I didn't put months over here because it's the similar concept, but with a little bit of change. So let's say ACIP makes a new recommendation that necessitates a need to change one of the protocols. Then the SME would submit an updated protocol or feedback via the feedback form to inform the board that the protocol needs to be updated. If it is an urgent need to change, there would be a special PFAC meeting. So this group would have a special meeting. Those are called at least 24 hours in advance, and there's certain noticing requirements. If it's not urgent, it would be added to the next regularly scheduled meeting. The PFAC would then motion to send any amended protocols to the board for review. Again, if it was urgent, the board would have a special board meeting to consider that change in rule and protocol. If it's not urgent, it would go to the next board meeting agenda. The board considers the amended protocol. If it's urgent, they could adopt the amended protocol via temporary rule, and that will be good for 180 days. And then at the next scheduled board meeting, send it to permanent rulemaking. If it's not urgent, they would just send it to permanent rulemaking at the board meeting. Then you have a rulemaking hearing. The board considers consideration to adopt the permanent rule, and then the effective date for adoption of the permanent rule. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions about this initial process or the ongoing process or anything? I'm going to stop sharing just so I can see any raise of hands. Okay. So then I think that's all I have on rules. Committee Member Anderson.
All right. Looks like next we will review and discuss the formulary and protocols individually with staff member Davis.
Okay. So subject matter expert Valdez, I had put onto the agenda reviewing the protocols, that it was like the third look first and then the second look and then the first, but I'm open to whatever you think would work best. So you tell me which protocol I need to open and then I will open it.
Good morning, committee members and board staff. I was thinking the opposite, but I'm flexible if you have good reasoning for that. Just so some of our subject matter experts could maybe drop off at some point once we get through the new things. But I'm open.
That's totally fine with me.
Okay.
Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, and I can kind of queue up who the people are. So I am going to present first, and I'd like to first talk about HPV.
Just a second, I'll like that pulled up and shared on the screen. Share screen. Okay, are you seeing the HPV protocol?
I do see it.
Great.
So no substantial updates as far as new elements in the protocol coming from ACIP. There is a change from what pharmacists currently see with the Oregon Health Authority, and that is adding in the elements that are shared clinical decision making. So you will see the extended age range beyond age 27 indicated here and marked as shared clinical decision making. So ACIP has for some time approved shared clinical decision making for ages 27 through 45. So that is in addition from the current OHA protocol. Otherwise, the other information here is the same in the vaccine schedule. Next up are the licensed vaccines. There's only one, which is Gardasil, and you see that here. Recommendations for use, we did make this clear here, routine use for children and adults age 9 through 26, and then you see here for adults aged greater than 26, the shared clinical decision making. I did feel like it was appropriate, if you can scroll down to the next page, to add in the information that's included in the ACIP recommendation, because I do think it's helpful, and because this is new compared to the current version from OHA, what the pharmacist should consider. I'm happy to entertain moving that out, but I do think it's helpful for the pharmacist. So it talks about the different considerations that a pharmacist should consider. And I actually see a typo because I copied this from meningococcal. That should say HPV in number A instead of meningococcal. I apologize. Editing fail on number 1 already. I see Andrew, our committee member Gibbler, has his hand up.
Thank you. I was just curious about this language around shared clinical decision making, because I've gotten questions from pharmacists whether pharmacists are included in that, and they, as far as I can tell from the CDC, they are considered a provider under shared clinical decision making. But is that clear enough? Do you think that's clear enough for pharmacists in this protocol, that pharmacists are part of that, versus the old OHA protocols, which seem to be a little less clear on that fact?
Yeah, the old protocols, they were not consistent for one, but in at least one of the protocols, and honestly, I don't remember whether it was HPV or MenB or pneumo, they had a line that said, like, this does not, shared clinical decision making does not apply to this pharmacy protocol. So that language obviously has been removed. And then this whole section would be new language. So my intent with this new language, as well as adding it in the table, I mean, almost the first thing they see is that table, which allows clinical decision making, and then there's this content. So that was my intent, but I'm happy to edit or make it more clear, or add language if we feel like there needs to be a call out. But I think if you scroll up back to where we were, to me, when you're looking at this front page, where I see, aha, I can do this, is right here in section 3, vaccine schedule.
Yeah, it does seem more clear. I wonder if what you think about under recommendations for use, when you speak about under BA, shared clinical decision making, refers to an individually based vaccine recommendation informed by a decision making process between the healthcare provider and the patient. I wonder if that healthcare provider, which includes, that includes pharmacists, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And is that, so that's might be clear to some. I don't know if it's clear to just knowing pharmacists. I just don't know if we need to make it more explicit or not.
I support that amendment. So we could do one of two things. We could keep it simple and just say including pharmacists, or we could copy the whole sentence from the CDC that talks about all the different healthcare providers. I feel like it would be sufficient to add the including pharmacists as is indicated here. And I agree. I think the more clarity we can provide, the better. So I
Yeah,
support that
either way
addition.
works. Yeah, either I'd support either option, or even if we have a link out to that specific page on the ACIP, that would be maybe helpful too. But either of them. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Oh.
Staff Member Davis, let's not move on quite yet. So I wanted to kind of discuss a little bit about the shared clinical decision making. So pharmacists are permitted to prescribe based on these protocols. And the protocols have to essentially eliminate decision-making processes, or they have to provide the algorithm by which the pharmacist makes the decision. So including information that the pharmacist is one of the people that can make a shared clinical decision is fine. But what we have to make sure is that the protocol then gives the conditions by which the pharmacist makes the decision. So what factors make the pharmacist be able to say, yes, this is appropriate for you, or are there factors that the pharmacist would then say no? So there needs to be some sort of a decision tree rather than just open statements. Does that make sense? Like inclusion, exclusion criteria, something like that, where the pharmacist isn't independently making the decision outside of what the protocol says.
Okay, so the information is contained in these bullets here. What we could do is translate that. I'm kind of thinking of some of the other protocols, and I don't know if the committee wants to go in this direction, where we had kind of a in a chart, there would be a table and there would be a statement, and then you would have like a red and a green yes, no. Is that if the committee would like to go in that direction, we could do that. Basically taking those bullets that we see there and making them into a proceed and don't proceed kind of thing. Yeah.
I pulled up an example on the screen.
Yep.
Just
so we could do that to provide consistency. I think that would be a great idea. I see a hand for committee member Gibbler.
Thank you. Is that necessary if the protocols already clearly outline who's indicated and who has contraindications to these vaccines?
you don't have to have the yes, no, but you do have to have, like, I was just kind of reading, like, I is informational. 2, I'm just gonna say numbers. 2 is informational. At any age, having a new sex partner is a risk for acquiring HPV. So is 3, like 3 is informational, but at that point, is this something that would make a pharmacist be able to say you're age 15 and you have a new sex partner, therefore I can provide you with the HPV vaccine? Like this is an example of, it needs to be clear that having this risk factor makes them a candidate. Or does
Yeah,
not
and
make
this would be, I know you're giving an example, but this would be over
Yeah.
age 26. So this could be
Okay.
you're age 40
Okay.
and you have a new partner. Would this be a reason to use that? Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that the statement up above would suffice, just because it is extra assessment. But honestly, it's a win to get the shared clinical decision making. So if we need to put a table in there and we can pull out the informational things separate from the assessment things. So I agree with staff member Davis in that regard. And so, for example, this new sex partner at any age would be an assessment question where you would have kind of that yes, no, green, red. And then we could say the same thing for, non-monogamous partnerships, or, each, as we go through each one, taking those assessment pieces out into a table. So example, in 8, adults with multiple lifetime sex partners. So yeah, we can pull those into a table.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
Any others? Did I cover that accurately, other staff members? And is there anything else you would like to add for Amy's benefit?
This is Joe. I have one thing that, since it's shared, there may need to be something about, does the patient actually want it? I think that's part of the shared decision making, obviously, just to make sure that we don't forget that part.
Jennifer, committee member Myers and committee member Anderson have their hands up as well.
Perfect. I can't see the screen, so just call on people, please.
All right, so committee member Anderson or Myers, please go ahead.
This committee member Myers, can somebody help draw me a scenario? I'm a family physician working in a clinic. Is this scenario for patients who come in and say, hey, I think I'd like the HPV, if they ask for the HPV vaccine, then is the pharmacist counseling them? Is that what we're doing here? Or is this, oh, hey, this person is 40 and I think they should have the vaccine, so I'm trying to encourage them to do this? Or what? Help me understand the scenarios where we're helping somebody with the shared clinical decision-making process.
Sure, I can address that. To circle back to staff member Schnabel's concern, the first sentence in A does say the process is between the pharmacist and the patient. So I think that's pretty clear there. There is more language around shared clinical decision making, but in the interest of keeping the protocols succinct, I felt like that first sentence was a good summary that yes, it is shared between the provider and the patient. As far as what it would look like, yes. So let's say you're working in a community pharmacy, a patient presents that is age 30. They come up to the counter and say, hey, I'm interested in getting the HPV vaccination. At this point, we would have to refer them to their physician, even though it is ACIP approved with shared clinical decision making, because our current protocol doesn't allow the pharmacist to start that dialogue. And so at that point, the pharmacist, if it was me, I would say, great, let's talk about that. The routine indication is for people up through age 26, but let's have that conversation. Obviously, because of the nature of this vaccine, we would probably go to a private space to have that conversation and have some of these questions, just like we do with the contraceptive prescribing. So, pharmacists are pretty aware of that. And then the pharmacist would go through the table that we are yet to create with these few screening questions that would potentially indicate that this person might benefit from the vaccine. So pharmacists are very used to, and in every patient, no matter what their age, we are always doing a benefit risk conversation, before we administer. That's built into all of our protocols. And so that's not anything unusual. It would just be new to the pharmacist to be able to have that conversation with patients beyond the age of 26. So definitely not driven by the pharmacist saying necessarily like you should get this vaccine, but the dialogue between the patient and the pharmacist. Here's the indications, what is your risk for getting this infection and what benefit does the vaccine provide? Do you want to proceed? Does the pharmacist feel comfortable proceeding? You know, does the patient want it? If those two things line up, and then you've got your yeses in the table, then the pharmacist would be able to administer.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And committee member Anderson.
Hi, this is committee member Anderson. I was just thinking over the process that you mentioned in other different protocols with the green and the red and all of that. And I guess I'm worried that would open up another can of worms with the fact that most of those other protocols are based on answers to questionnaires. And as far as I'm aware, none of these, and I even went back to look at like the all vaccines protocol, and I don't see that we've ever included a questionnaire that pharmacists would have to use beforehand. So then having an area to refer back to saying, if the patient answered yes to this question, then do you know what I mean?
Yes. So way back when, many months ago, maybe a year ago, when we started this process, the committee did agree that they were not going to require an intake form because currently intake forms, we call them consent and release forms, are already in practice, and every company has a different one that's based on ACIP recommendations. So yes, you're right. There is no committee recommended questionnaire that goes along with these protocols.
And I'm totally fine with keeping it like that, especially because you're right in that a lot of pharmacists are very familiar with the OHA protocols and how those have been laid out. So I guess my preference would be to stay away from doing the yes and no thing. But I do think maybe what we can do in this section is try to make it a little bit more clear, specifically about the age piece of things. Is the clinical decision-making when you were looking at ACIP, was it saying that that had more to do with patients greater than 26 years old? So is this only applying to those, or is it also applying to less than that? So I'm wondering if we start this out by saying for anybody that's over 26, that you need to have a conversation with the patient about its benefits in this age group kind of thing.
So if we scroll up a little to the start of this section, that's kind of how this started. So this is under section
there we
B.
Go.
Yeah. So take a look at that and see if that meets your needs. And then I agree we can reword what's below that because it is a mix of informational and assessment, and we could clearly call out the assessment pieces without using a red, green, yes, no chart. We could just separate the informational from the what the pharmacist would actually use. So that last sentence in the next section that says considerations are, like, we can make that sentence stronger language. Like, these are the considerations that the pharmacist will use in their, decision making, or however we want to word that. I can propose something. ACIP leaves it worded a little bit less directive because they want the healthcare provider to drive that process, and they don't want to say that these are the only considerations because every provider patient conversation is going to be different and unique. But we could potentially make some word swaps to strengthen that sentence that starts with considerations are available. We can change that wording, I think, to make it a little stronger, and then have right below that just the things that are the considerations, like the discussion points. And take out some of the informational, move it somewhere else, or perhaps it's not necessary in this section.
Yeah, I like that. This committee member Anderson.
Committee member Gibler agrees.
So do any committee members object to not having a chart and just having the considerations with stronger language and all together and called out in a section, making it very clear that this is what the pharmacist will use? If everyone agrees with that, I will mock it up in that way and not go in the direction of the chart.
This is committee member Gibler. So if someone that does not have risk factors and is in this age group and wants the vaccine, and kind of be clear, is it clear that the pharmacist could then prescribe and administer it? Just if that's it. Kind of did Joe Schnabel's, staff member Schnabel's comment or question.
To me, ACIP makes it pretty clear that this is not, so the reason the ACIP chose shared clinical decision making is they were not comfortable making a routine recommendation. So for example, Hep B, there's a whole bunch of risk factors that make an adult at more risk for hepatitis B. But at the very end of the ACIP recommendation, it says, you know, anyone that wants to get it can get it. ACIP did not do this with that. So I would not be comfortable going that far because they did put it in shared clinical decision making for a reason. So I do think the pharmacist would have to have at least one of these considerations be present in order to vaccinate.
That makes
Otherwise,
perfect
it would be a routine and that language would be in there. So
yeah,
that's
that
my
makes sense.
take.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you for
welcome.
clarifying that. Yeah.
Any other hands? I can't.
I don't see any
All right.
at the moment.
And we'll keep now we'll keep moving.
Perfect. And thank you for the guidance. That's very helpful. I am clear on how to fix it. I already have ideas running around. Ooh, we're
I'm
going
gonna
places.
give me just a quick give me a quick minute because I want to make sure I don't lose this.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
You are the key to all this being organized. So take the time you need. Nothing new in contraindications. This is not a new vaccine or any new products. Warning and precautions. I didn't have any comments there. Other considerations, nothing new there. We can keep scrolling down. Really, there's no other new information. So really the only piece in this one that was added was that section in the recommendations for use about shared clinical decision making. So that's it on this one. Next one I would like to talk about is meningococcal.
Just a second. Pull that one up. Okay. Enable. Oh, whoa! I went to my other screen. Sorry about that.
Isn't it fun
happens when
presenting
you
with
have
two
two screens
screens? Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Ready.
Okay, so we did have a few changes here. So, you know, we see a lot of manufacturers trying to move away from the minuscule amounts of latex still left in their products. So one of our products, Bexero, that contraindication was removed. We also, I called out the 1 and 2 vial presentations for Menveo here. I did not see that highlighted in the OHA protocol. And then the OHA protocol was actually loaded with references with Menactra, even though it was published after Menactra had been removed from the market. So there's been some distance now from that product being gone, and so I took out all the references to Menactra because it's just not pertinent anymore. So those are the what's new section. As far as the protocol, nothing has changed. I did make it very clear in this section and kind of beefed up the language a little bit about interchangeable and not interchangeable to make sure that that was clear for the various vaccines. And then for vaccine schedule, you'll see the schedule for routine use and then for high risk persons. So it is routine for adolescents. It is high risk use for people of other ages. And then the third chart you'll see there is, so the first two are meningococcal ACY or WY, and then it moves into the men B. So men B for healthy persons is also shared clinical decision making. So I did add in this chart. This is not in the current OHA protocol. It refers to it, but it says pharmacists can't do this. So here it's kind of adding it in, taking away that you can't do this. And then we have the schedule for high risk persons below that, so that expands the age range. And then as we move into licensed vaccines, I did update the vaccine components. So normally what we see with our vaccines, sometimes it's just as simple as saying hepatitis A. Here I did think it was important to add a little bit more detail because these are conjugate vaccines. So one of the products is conjugated to a tetanus toxoid, and the other one is conjugated to a diphtheria protein. That does come into play with contraindications. So that column that says vaccine components is a little more detailed than the current OHA protocol. So the pharmacist can see, what does that mean when it says TT? You can read that, oh, this is conjugated to a tetanus toxoid protein. Moving down from there, no changes to the men B ones. Recommendations for use. So we have our adolescent recommendation. Thank you. For A, C, Y, and W, none of that has changed. And then section B is high risk persons. None of that has changed. Section C is men B in high risk persons. None of that has changed. And then section D was added. And so that's the recommendations for use for meningococcal B in healthy persons. So that again is where we bring in the shared clinical decision making. I used it's the same language as the last one that we looked at. So I think we can just add the same note that we will update this section to match what we do in the HPV. And so you can see here the considerations for that. Mostly it's people who are going to be in a kind of shared living situation, but they're not currently in an outbreak. So that's the new group that we could potentially vaccinate. Committee Member Gibler.
Committee Member Gibler, thank you. This is so much more clear. Thank you. Can we also add under D, the section under A1, when it talks about healthcare provider, can we also just add including pharmacists?
I think we could just put a note at the top of this section that we just match up the whole entire section. So whatever we create for HPV, I'll just port over. Obviously, the bullet points are going to be different, but the other language surrounding that will make identical.
Thank you. And this is non-substantive, but if up in the top of this section under military recruits, 19 to 21 years, maybe just say of age, add years of age or age 19 to 21.
Scroll.
If it matters.
Yeah.
I know you. You
Yep,
make that
right
clear in
there.
the others.
Number C.
Yeah. Thank you.
Boy, did I have a task to take this number of protocols and make all the words match. I've probably gone through these a dozen times, and every time I do it, I find new things.
That's a lot of work.
So yes, thank you for that comment for sure. The other thing I noticed, and I want to just make a little note for myself, is up in my vaccine schedule, I have for men B, I think I have healthy and then at risk, and then it's the opposite in the recommendations for use. So I'll put those in the same order. So the charts are in the same order as the language below. It was for men B.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I know there's a lot here.
We moved along here.
Yeah, just make it on that one, like put in the same order as the charts. I will typically, how my brain works is I usually will go healthy first and then high risk. So unless anyone objects, that's the order I'll put them in. Okay. So we can pass through kind of all that shared, unless you guys want to look at the bullets specifically. We could go through that. So there is a low number of cases typically in this age group. So that's actually kind of a con to vaccinating. There is an increased risk among college students, especially living in in-campus housings or in the Greek housing. And then it does provide relatively short duration of protection as well. And so actually, as I was reading through these, I think there's more kind of cons to vaccination than pros. So, these conversations will be more leading people that they are not at risk for vaccination. But of course, there could be unique individuals where it makes sense. So it gives the pharmacist the option if they do find something that would be high risk for a person. So. And then I don't know if we scroll down a little bit more, there might be one or two more bullets. Yeah, so this is interesting, and staff member Davis was part of this too with the OSU outbreak. When we did the Mass Vax clinic at U of O, they actually did a CDC study at our clinic to specifically test for carriage. So they now have published that data that the Men-B vaccination has no effect on meningococcal carriage. So it provides individual protection, but you're not going to be creating herd protection by vaccinating more people. So again, kind of leaning away from whether or not that vaccine would be on the benefit side. So I thought that was interesting.
This is staff member Davis.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I Googled real quick and looked up the vaccine requirements for University of Oregon and Oregon State, since they both had outbreaks on their campus. And they both have it in the highly recommended. So they don't require it because they do have a long list of vaccines they do require, but they both just say highly recommended for meningococcal B.
So I think let's scroll back up and see. I feel like that was in there somewhere, like unless required by school. Maybe make a note in this section. You could put it on number C, school requirements. And I will double check and see where I can find that and make sure it's called out. And if it's not there, then I'll add it to that section. I think that's a good call out.
some schools do require it. I think within the country,
Yeah.
it's usually closer
Mhm.
to their outbreak.
Yeah,
We're a few years out from the two in Oregon, but
agree.
I have run into many parents and patients wanting
Yeah.
that vaccine, even though it was
Mhm.
not required.
Yep. Just because of the media coverage and, just
Mhm.
knowledge of those previous outbreaks. Yeah. Okay. Nothing new in contraindications, nothing new in warnings and precautions. There is nothing new in other considerations, but I will call out line number F. And that's what kind of helps the pharmacist knowing that this is conjugated to a tetanus protein does not substitute for a tetanus immunization. So it's not a combination vaccine. The tetanus component is not conveying any immunologic effect. So that is included there for the pharmacist's benefit. Scrolling down through side effects and adverse reactions, nothing new. That's all the same. And the language for the 2 vial presentation, we just updated that and kind of verified with the package insert to make sure that was complete. And I think that is it. So you'll also see in the chart, we made a reference that the notes, there's specific directions for the 2 vial presentation that are included in C above.
This is committee member
Yes.
Gibler. Can we just add, sorry, just parentheses around the Fahrenheit temperature in the table there?
Mhm.
So it's similar to the other phone calls.
Thank you very much. Okay. So we are all set with meningococcal. The next one I would like to talk about is MMR.
Okay.
Staff member Davis, I did get a text from Brian Mayo, who's on the phone, and he's saying the chat feature is turned off. Can you have Jen share her screen so the public can follow along?
Staff member Davis, this meeting was noticed as an audio only meeting for the
Gotcha.
public.
Perfect. I will let him know. I feel like that's how it's been in the past too. Thank you. Okay, MMR. So new information for MMR is that this now allows for intramuscular administration. So previously was subcutaneous only. Now can be either for 2 of the 3 products. So I did update the immunization protocol to call those out separately. So you'll see for MMR2, you can do sub-Q or IM. For Priorix, sub-Q only, and for ProQuad, sub-Q or IM. So those are individual lines here. Moving down into the vaccine schedule. I did update the chart anywhere it said sub-Q. So I did have to call out the separate products, and that's why the products are separated. So there is one schedule for MMR2 and Priorix, and each notating the route, and then separate age range for ProQuad. So ProQuad has a narrow range, age 7 to 12, versus the above products are age 7 and older. So that is the product, the two above products are the ones you would use in adults. So that chart was updated to indicate those new routes and kind of make that clear. Then we move down into licensed vaccines. Those have not changed as far as any of the content in this table. And just for the committee's knowledge, the ProQuad is actually a combination vaccine with varicella, but it is included in the MMR protocol. You could potentially have patients that need both, and so you could accomplish that with that combo vaccine. Recommendations for use, nothing new here. We can scroll down. Nothing has changed. Contraindications, nothing has changed. Warnings and precautions, nothing new there. This is a live vaccine, so it does have all the standard live vaccine things. Under other considerations, they include information for people that have had various schedules of vaccines, which is helpful during a outbreak potentially. And then nothing new with side effects and adverse reactions, nothing new with storage and handling. Looks like we've got the parentheses there, so we're good.
Slee Valdez, Andrew has his hand up, and I'm not sure if that's residual or new. Andrew, sorry.
Remember, these IG is not defined actually in the protocol. So back on section 6, when it says IG,
under other considerations, I think.
Under section 6D.
Contraindications. Okay.
Contraindications. Yeah, it does.
It's down at the bottom. IG. Yep.
And then it's mentioned. IG is mentioned elsewhere in the protocol. So maybe.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That's an easy fix. So really not much new except for the new IM route, and that was updated for the individual products. Okay, what is my note here? Oh, okay. So my question was, they do have an appendix which includes intervals between IG products and the vaccine. So my question for the committee was, do you want to just provide a link to this information so when it is, if and when it is updated, that we don't have to update this chart? It's a lot of words to maintain.
Committee member Kibler agrees with that.
Staff member Davis, 2 questions. Do you know how often this chart is updated? Like, do you have any feel for that?
I don't. I would imagine it may be updated when new products come to the market, but other than that, it's probably pretty, standard information.
My only other thought would be, in your experience, my question for you, your experience working in a pharmacy, how likely is the pharmacy able to quickly access this information and get it on the internet versus it just being in the protocol for them to reference?
Yeah, so this is, in my experience, a more rare situation. This would be identified on your patient questionnaire. We ask if you've received any blood products. And so currently the training that pharmacists receive is that if someone has received blood products, that it is individual by product and that you would go to the package insert to determine the interval. So that's, I would say, what pharmacists are used to doing. I did notice, I'm not sure when OHA added this interval. It hasn't been there, or this appendix. It has not been there since the beginning of time. It is new in the last couple years, I believe. So, my other thought is, do we need the appendix?
This is committee member Anderson. I was actually just wondering that myself. If it is somewhat new and it's something that's found in other places, information, I don't know that it's needed.
So we refer in our initial all vaccines care treatment pathway that the pink book is the resource for this. And so it is definitely elsewhere in the other documents. This is more of to me, this is more of an overarching concept, and that's why it's included in that treatment and care pathway for all vaccines. The individualized part is the table, because that is specific to MMR. So I don't have a preference either way. I think it's a fairly rare situation. You're not referencing it so often that you would need this chart. It's a pretty rare occurrence, and the pharmacist knows that they can seek that out in the pink book or in the package insert. The package insert, honestly, is probably going to be more up to date, I would guess, by product.
So this committee member Anderson again, then I would vote to remove it.
Any other comments or objections to removing this appendix? Would you like to keep the verbiage and not the table, or do you think just remove the whole thing since it's covered in the treatment pathway? I could pop that verbiage in A up into other considerations. Just
Yeah,
as
that's what I was
a
about to
little
say.
call out. Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
And then get rid
Yeah,
of the
that would
table.
probably be, I agree. This is committee member Gibbon.
Excellent recommendation. I will say there is some history of OHA kind of making these protocols longer and longer and longer. And one of our goals was to eliminate things that could be consolidated and applied to all vaccines, as usual and typical practice. So I think that's a good change. Okay. So I think we're all set with this one. And then the last one that I'm going to talk about today is varicella.
Staff Member Davis, let's do this protocol and then we'll plan to take a break.
Okay.
Just looking at the time.
That's perfect because we're going to switch speakers. So excellent.
You just get this set up. Okay.
So same new update. So Varavax and Proquad both now allow for intramuscular administration, previously sub-Q only. And again, Proquad is included. It is a combination vaccine with MMR and varicella, because we do have patients within our allowed age range that may need both. So that is updated and reflected below in the immunization protocol. So you can see IM or sub-Q. And then also reflected in the vaccine schedule, IM or sub-Q. And again, the Proquad is a narrow age range, 7 to 12. So most of the time, for ages outside of that, you're going to be using the individual products. Licensed vaccines, nothing new. I think scroll back up to the FDA approved. I think we need to remove that greater than under the pro quad, down under licensed vaccines. It should say 7 years to 12 years, not greater than. Yeah, thank you. Okay, moving down. No changes in the recommendations for use. No changes to contraindications. This is another live vaccine, so you'll see all the things about pregnancy, immunodeficiency, etc. IG, we can make that update there. This one has the antibody containing products listed in warnings and precautions. So if you can just make a note there on item B to match up with the MMR protocol. So wherever it is listed, we'll make sure it's listed in the same section, whether that's warnings and precautions or other considerations. Probably more appropriate for a warning and precaution. I'll make sure they match. Nothing else new there. Same as MMR, we have the chart that refers to how you determine immunity. So that's in section B. That's not new though. And nothing new in the rest of those. I believe this one will also have an appendix, so we can make the same note to same as MMR. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, really, again, the only real change is now there is IM administration as an option. Any other comments or questions? Okay. So after the break, I will turn it over to Grachelle, one of my fellow subject matter experts. I am done with my section. I'll turn it back over to you, Staff Member Davis.
Staff Member Melvin, is our break 10 or 15 minutes? Remind me.
That is up to Committee Member Anderson. We did not put that on the agenda,
Okay.
so.
Ooh, this committee member Anderson, I have all sorts of power. Let's take a 15-minute break.
So we'll be back at 10:37. Did I do that right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Reconvene 10:37. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.